Hey everybody, thank you so much for coming today. Really excited to be presenting to you this fantastic group of panelists talking on all things information markets. Before we begin, a little bit about myself. I work at a firm called Archetype. We're an early stage venture firm based out of New York City, doing all of crypto, backing those ambitious founders in the space, and with a strong focus on the Farcaster ecosystem, and many of which builders are working on today. So excited to present them to you all. First off, we'll start with a quick round of intros, and I'll let Hirsch kick it off first, and we'll dive right into it.
Yeah. So I'm Hirsch. You'll know me on FarCaster as EulerLagrange. I'm the founder of a company called Opacity, and we work on zk-TLS. Essentially, we're trying to make Web 2 interoperable with Web 3.
Nice. I'm Connor McCormick. One of the things you're going to have to put up with me today is that I just took a bus in from SF last night, and I slept 4 hours. So if I say anything uncouth, then it's not my fault. It's actually the fault of the bus people. I am the CEO of the Network Goods Institute, and so we're focusing on funding public goods and then building collective intelligence swarms. And I'm sure we'll talk a lot more about that when we get to prediction markets.
Hey everyone, my name is Spencer, and I'm working on a project called Sway. So it's a prediction market product on Farcaster where you can create a market, post it as a frame, anyone can go and make any bets. The long-term goal for us is to become the world's most objective source of information with decentralized prediction markets. And prior to doing this, I was at CoinList doing a lot of token sales, and also at Masari doing a bunch of research. But yeah, excited to talk about this today.
Awesome. Thanks for that, guys. I'll kick it off. I think most people in the room have maybe heard of the term of information markets before, but it's a little bit abstract. What is an information market? What does it really mean? Why is it useful?
Should we ask for a poll?
Yeah, actually, who in the audience actually knows what an information market is? Okay, perfect. All the better.
A fifth.
Yeah, a fifth. Not bad. We can get those numbers up. Let's maybe start by defining what an information market is. Hirsch, you want to kick us off here?
So I'm more of a practical guy, and I don't like to linger on the philosophical. So I put it into two buckets.
That's not true about you. He's so philosophical. He runs the philosophy channel.
No. The joke is I do the science channel. Yeah. So I put it into two broad categories. If you think about prediction markets, you're basically making bets on what the information will be at some point in the future, right? So that's the classic example of an information market. But I also put in Oracle networks, being incentivizing funneling data from one place to another, and that's what you need to power a prediction market.
Love it.
You want a definition of a information market?
Yeah, and maybe tell us why you think it's useful.
So if y'all are familiar with futarchy, okay, we'll do another poll. Who has heard of futarchy? Futarchy is governance with prediction markets, and the whole idea is that markets are pretty good at predicting the future. They are fairly well incentivized to do a good job. And so prediction markets say, okay, what if we first vote on the values that we care about, and then we allow a market to bet on what's likely to occur. And what's special about this is that you're going to get all the skin in the game and all the accurate predicting incentives that you normally get out of a prediction market, that's still then guided by the values that we collectively care about. And so this is exciting and it's not really a new idea. If you've been reading Vitalik, he's been writing about this, of course, since 2014. But this is always true with Vitalik, is that every idea that you encounter, he has already written a blog about a decade ago. And so this is an exciting possibility for how we could collectively govern ourselves. It's the true definition of decentralized because it's permissionless, right? It's credibly neutral. Anyone can participate in it. And it tends to be pretty accurate. And so as we struggle with DAOs that do a very good job at governing and organizing themselves, maybe information and prediction markets are a path to doing it in a decentralized way that's still competent. Is that a friendly enough term for what we're missing from DAOs today?
I guess to sum it up, I have a broad and simple definition, and all this is basically just use markets to incentivize information gathering, collection, and hopefully you can get a better pulse of what's going on in the world, right? I think if you believe in capitalism and libertarian values, which hopefully most of you do, given that you're in crypto. I think you should somewhat subscribe to the idea of like efficient markets, and you think that, all right, given enough incentives and markets, then people should reach a optimal, the most efficient way of information gathering and whatnot. So I think that's really what the core of information markets are, right? If you have incentives and skin in the game, then you can get the best information possible, and that can take a bunch of different forms. I think prediction markets are probably the most common form factor that people think about, but then there's also products like trends.market, for example, that you can purchase different Twitter trends and get a sense of, oh, what do you think will be the big trends and things that people talk about in the future. And I think there's a lot of different ways that you can play with information markets and whatnot. But I think really just boils down to, can you use markets to get the best information possible?
Great definition. In the context of crypto, why are information markets relevant? What is the relationship between information markets and crypto? And all of you, at least to some extent, build in crypto, cryptography, blockchains, whatever it may be. Would love for you to describe the relationship between what you're building, crypto, and information markets in your own personal experience.
All right, so historically, this is not what I work on, but the main thing you want to source from the outside world into blockchain, because the issue with blockchains is that they have no conception of the outside world, right? And this is called the Oracle problem, right? How do you get trustlessly, get data from the outside world, like a price of USDC to ETH on Coinbase onto the blockchain? And that's important for a lot of consumer applications or pricing gas correctly, stuff like that. Historically, that's what we like the main first use case of oracles. So at Opacity, we work on zk-TLS. In a nutshell, we basically do ZKPs over HTTPS requests. So boring example, I can let you prove your bank balance and that it came from api.chase.com, right? So now there's really two categories of applications. One is on the really new use case is on private user data. The fact that you can bring in your bank account balance on chain if you want to, even though you probably don't. Or maybe that you have a certain amount of capital in your a range proof of that is probably what you want to bring on chain if there's a use case for it. But on the Oracle side, it's basically what Chainlink does. I'm not a big fan of Chainlink, right? The security is pretty hand-wavy. They're forced to keep it centralized because if they made it decentralized, it's much more likely that something bad would happen. And so another use for this technology is for public data, you can actually have trust-minimized oracles. You can never have truly trustless oracles, but it's definitely much better than how Chainlink does it.
All right, we're dunking on Chainlink. I'll dunk on Balaji while we're at it. You have to pick someone to dunk on. Balaji has this quote where he says that Bitcoin is important because it's the first provable thing, right? These transactions are the first things that you can actually prove happened in history. And this is a silly idea. Because, of course, the pyramids are another example of a thing that you can prove happened in history. The problem is, as we know from Ancient Aliens, the famous documentary, is that the question of where the pyramids came from is what's up for debate. So we know they're there. We can all just look at them, right? Balaji, there you go. There's your proof of work. There's a bunch of blocks stacked on top of each other. The question is, were they made by aliens? Were they made by Egyptians, right? So this question of meaning, this question of imbuing things that that these facts, right, that you can prove on chain, imbuing them with meaning, relating them to one another, that's the really big question that we have to somehow figure out how to solve. And that's the problem that science tries to figure out how to solve. So how do we take data sets and say what stories about the world can we believe based on the evidence we see in the world? What evidence can we believe based on the stories we see in the world? And that's what we do in language. In language, we're trying to figure out how do these things relate to one another. If we're not careful, I will start talking about Wittgenstein and philosophy, but we're going to skip it. So this is the ultimate problem to solve. And so I think that blockchains without sense-making apparatuses are a little bit like birds that have hollow wings or hollow bones, but no wings. Which is that the hollow bones are necessary, but they're insufficient for what we're collectively trying to solve, right? You need to have the facts on chain. They have to be there. But in order for you to take flight, you need these sense-making mechanisms. And I think what's exciting about information markets is that they give us that. They give us these sense-making mechanisms. They give us these ways to tie the things that we know to the things that we should do about it.
So maybe I won't explicitly dunk on one person, but maybe I have a semi-dunk, which is, so I guess in my mind, I think the promise of information markets is to create a truly objective and accurate source of information in the world, right? Right now, all of us know there's a bunch of misinformation from big media and whatnot. There's political agendas. There's a lot of like AI-generated information that it's all just nonsense out there. And I think information markets have an opportunity to solve that problem essentially. And I think why crypto is particularly useful for this is two things. One is that global neutrality, and then two is kind of more of the payment rails and like the ability to facilitate these markets cross-border. So starting on the neutrality side, I think I'm a bit like big like Bitcoin believer and like crypto believer, but I also simultaneously understand that most things don't really need to be like truly decentralized and have that neutrality and whatnot. I think that's just extremely impractical. And I think most of the times, like, the world has existed for thousands of years with very high degrees of trust and has operated fine. I think there's only a few categories of things that really need that neutrality, which is like money, and I would argue information, because you want information that is not controlled by a single party, and you want information that can be challenged by everyone else involved in the production of that information. So I think that's one thing that, why crypto is just better, that decentralization technology and whatnot, I don't have to go into. And I think the other part is that cross-border, market facilitation. And this is kind of my dunk, and I think FarCaster is an example, one where we haven't done a great job there. Where, on FarCaster, we have a highly US-centric community, and like with most of the prediction markets out there, they're all very, very US-centric. Like most of the market subjects are about the US elections or US-based sports games or whatever. But the reality is that there's people in every single country need information, and like there is a huge amount of the world that we're not tapping into in terms of that information generation and the information gathering. And like crypto very much solves that problem of cross-border payments. You're able to do like a prediction market in USDC in Taiwan and America and South Africa, whatever it is. So I think those are probably the two biggest benefits in terms of like building information markets on top of crypto.
So the key theme that I'm gathering here is information markets are for understanding the world better and what we should do better and sense making. And prediction markets are an example of one of those tools that we can use for sense making. But I'm starting to notice a rift in people's approaches here to the exact approach to how we understand more about the world that we live in. Specifically on prediction markets, which I think are the most popular form of information markets today, what do we think that they're doing well? What do we think that they may lack in? What are their drawbacks, and where do we see them going into the future? I'll start off with Connor, if he wants to take us off.
Okay. I have no one to dunk on to make it interesting. So instead, oh no, we can talk about UMA. So it's not interesting unless it's spicy, right? So one of the core problem at the heart of a prediction market is at some point you must resolve it, right? At some point, the way that prediction markets work is that there's some statement that says like, will Joe Biden win the 2024 US elections? And then at some point, you have to transition from the state of like, I don't know, and people are buying and selling shares, to it either resolves to yes or it resolves to no. And in order to do that, like there has to be some trusted group of people that resolves that market. And so that means that you can't use a prediction market for governance. Because of course, if you could, you would, you have to somehow reach that consensus about what has actually happened. Now in, like on a blockchain with proof of stake, you can get this convergence out of it because it's fairly objective. You can use, you can use proof of stake to set up this really great shelling point above the fact that everybody agrees that the hash is correct, right? And so this, because it's very predictable, because it's very consistent, you can get consensus on a blockchain. But with prediction markets, it's much harder. We remember what happened in the last election, where there was like a bunch of people that just decided that this was true, and other people decided that the other thing was true. And so when you have disagreement like that, how do you ultimately resolve that disagreement? That's the question at the heart. That's why it's really difficult to use prediction markets for governance. So there's like people that are working on this problem of automated market resolution. I like UMA as an example of this. And you can do these kind of like, there's all these maybe like creative ways that you can kind of ratchet up the stakes so that people are more likely to converge to something. Also, if you're familiar with, what's the online court?
Claros? Claros.
If you're familiar with Claros, they try and do a similar thing. And so this is taking a prediction market and trying to make it so that it has the capacity to resolve, but it resolves autonomously. But it's very hard because you can imagine all the ways in which people can pull it from side to side. Or maybe you have some trusted judges that you say, okay, great, we're happy with the judges stepping in. We're going to trust these judges to pull the lever. Yes, did it resolve? Yes or no? But to your point, it just brings up this question again of like, who should we trust? How should we select as judges? And so on. Does that do a good job of talking about the shortcomings?
And I think it's actually the perfect segue into what you're working on, Hirsch, because to some extent you are creating an economic and cryptographic mechanism to get people to report the truth and must deal with some of this contentious behavior as well in your system. So maybe it'd be helpful to think about how you handle like creating incentives for reporting truth that actually work.
Well, at the end of the day, ZK-TLS is a very unopinionated form of technology. It's an anything to anyone, right? What I'm most interested in is like the new consumer products that you can build that you couldn't build before. The example that I always give is that of Plaid, right? If I ask you guys, would you share your bank credentials with anyone? I'm guessing all of you are going to say no, right? But if I ask a different question, would you give me your bank credentials, or would you rather wait 3 days, give me your bank account number, wait 3 days, and like a report? I'm going to send some small deposits, and you tell me how much I sent, and then we can verify that's your bank account, right? If you ask that question, pretty much all the time, people give you their bank credentials, right? So when it comes to incentivizing users, I'm mostly interested in like what problems can we actually solve for the user, just like extracting data from one place, sending it to another place, and verifying that the data is correct, right? Now, on the prediction market side, one example that comes to mind, right? Like I'm actually launching a meme app for Farcaster. So one of the games I have is for the Carta API, right? Which I can let you prove basically how early you got equity into a company, right? It's like a slick NFT project. Now, from the outside, the company itself has an incentive to basically shill its own bags, right? If it's doing poorly, it's never going to report that. But now, if you deploy a prediction market on top of that, and then incentivize people to actually report the data as it is, and then you can see how many of these employees are actually executing their options, right? How many of them go to expiration? And that's like a very good measure of how that company's actually doing, right? Are these employees willing to shell out tens of thousands of dollars to execute their options? So that's really how I think about it.
Love it. I'll pass it on to Spenser here. Concretely, building an information market in crypto, building a prediction market in crypto, what are the actual blockers and challenges that you're dealing with right now? In what ways is the infrastructure we're building on insufficient from like a very like tangible perspective? Like what are the problems you're running into?
Yeah, I think prediction market building is actually much more of a social engineering problem than a technical engineering problem. Like obviously, like, you know, there's a lot to be desired on the Oracle side, and you have like situations where you have disagreements, you can't resolve things correctly, etc. But the reality is those are like very, very small percentage of the markets. Like the biggest problem with prediction markets is simply lack of users and lack of liquidity, right? Like, you know, you just don't have enough people using these things, and you don't have people having a positive enough impression of these things to be wanting to use it. So I think the number one problem is like, how can you get more people to use this thing? How can you design these products in such a way that is attractive to the normie? Like if you look at the existing prediction markets out there, the biggest ones, they're all about like, oh, who's going to win the election in 4 years? Or like, something about Fed rate cuts and stuff. Like, is a normal person like really, do they really give a shit about this? I don't think so. I think the numbers say that, the numbers tell that same story, right? Like the best prediction markets, their volumes are lower than what a meme coin would be doing on a daily basis. Like that just screams like there's not enough people using this thing. So I think the number one problem to solve is like, can you create a whole new market segment of like interesting market topics to drive engagement And part of that is also regulatory of like, can you get the US and whatever governments to accept these prediction markets and understand that these things can actually be used as a social good. And I think that's actually the really big part is like, people have a big negative connotation of prediction markets. They just think, oh, this thing is raw gambling, like it's a game of luck, like people are going to lose their life savings, but they don't also understand that you can also use these prediction markets to generate such objective information that my mom and dad can use that as their information source on a day-to-day basis. So I think that's really what prediction markets need to solve. I maybe it's because I'm like more of a BD kind of guy and like that's my background. Like I strongly believe it's just a matter of adoption. Can you get enough people to use this thing, and then we can solve all the technical problems like as those things actually come up, instead of building this like perfectly engineered system from day one and like have a shitty product.
Love it.
I have a question for Spencer about that.
Chime in, yeah.
And for the audience. How many of y'all already use prediction markets as part of your news diet? Okay. Interesting. So it might be something to try. You can go to, like Polymarket is a great source. Manifold Markets is another great source. We're not affiliated with these. We're not shilling for them. But it's really valuable to take like a headline that you've seen come across your feed and then just go and look it up really quick in a prediction market, because it'll give you like a gut sense of what does the market think as a whole. And it's much harder to be biased. It's much harder to inject bias into that result than it is to inject it into a headline. And so, in fact, I know a lot of people who have completely transitioned off of ingesting like news from a traditional news source, and they just start with the prediction markets. And then if they want to know more about it, then to get the details, they go and they read a couple of articles about the issue. And in fact, you might go and read like 2 or 3 different articles, and then you'll come back and make a little bet in the prediction market because you think you have some insight that somebody else doesn't have, and maybe before you know it, you're paying for your lunch with your subscription to whatever it is that you subscribe to. So I had a question for you about the kinds of things that you think could be fun, and whether or not you've been following Manifold Markets and like the kinds of questions that they're putting up, because they're trying to also gamify prediction markets. So what do you think is fun for people to bet on in a prediction market?
Yeah, I think there's, when I think of prediction markets, there's like 2 parts of it, right? One is obviously like the information gathering component of it. And then the other is like, how can you use prediction markets as a way of engagement and entertainment? And I think that's kind of where we're starting. Because frankly, as a newcomer, like it's impossible for me to go out and get like $50 million of liquidity on my market from day one. So like that's kind of why we've built on Farcaster specifically from the beginning, is we're trying to embed our markets as a part of the social feed. So for example, 2 days ago when there was like the FarCon concert at in this venue, I made a market. It's like, oh, are the cops going to come shut it down because it gets too lit? Like that type of stuff drives a lot of engagement, gets people like just betting for fun, and it's an entertainment thing. It's kind of like my friends and I in college, we just make bets about stupid things all the time, and it's a matter of like proving who's right and also just making a game more interesting and whatever event more engaging. So I think that's kind of how I'm thinking about like prediction markets at least for our product in the short to medium term, is like, can we bake it into these socially native experiences like Farcaster, Telegram, Discord, streaming, etc., make the viewing experience more fun, use that as a way to get more and more users, and then eventually reach a point where we have that large amount of users and that liquidity that those users bring in to become the more objective source of information in the future.
Love it. Connor, my sense of it is that the information, or I guess the thing that you're building right now and how it involves information market skews further away from entertainment and more towards governance. Would love to think about your thoughts around how to make that accessible, because so far information markets haven't made it mainstream. They haven't crossed the chasm. Like, what do you think the mechanisms are to get there, and how do you think about it in the context of what you're building?
Well, I can't believe you all don't predict in prediction markets. I'm really discouraged. How many of y'all?
Just for a second, on the last...
Oh, I just turned you off.
On what Spencer was saying, we're going to disclose Benji's Tinder performance next month. Please go just make your bets.
Yeah. Now that's fun, yeah. Is this not on? This is try number 2, try number 3. How many of y'all own a meme coin? Okay. That's some pretty good adoption there. Fuck, man. Okay.
How many of you actively bought a meme coin versus getting it airdropped to you? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we got some work to do to onboard some people. Like, how do we make it fun? This is a good question. I don't know the answer. I think that like one of the things that I'm hopeful for is that we do know that people will participate in governance. People will work in jobs, right? People will do a job. So I think that ultimately it might end up looking a little bit like a job. Like the only way that you can get people to actually invest the cognitive labor that's necessary to play these more like advanced games of governance is if they're getting paid for it. Because otherwise it's just not fun. And the truth is that forecasting and predicting is like extremely cognitively involved behavior. So, but you can see like how I'm emotionally deflated here. I want you all to love prediction markets as much as I love them. And what I'm about to describe to you is like even more complex than prediction markets. So, so this is why I had 4 monthly active users on my app last month. So here's what I think we could do, right? Here's the world that I think we could live in. And what we're imagining is maybe like, imagine that this is a governance mechanism that replaces like a board of directors, right, for a company. Or a, the people in the HOA that are deciding like how they're gonna allocate your fees, okay? This is the place that we're thinking of applying this. And the game that we wanna set up is that those people who are the best at changing their minds are the ones that get the most influence in the game. That's what we're trying to set up. And this is like really at the heart of what science does, right? Well, the reason that we trust science, the thing that makes something a science, is that someone is capable, like someone puts forward a theory that's possible of being falsified, right? So falsifiability is this property of something that is trustworthy. And it kind of makes sense, right? Like we trust those people that say things that they would be willing to change their mind. And those people who are really dogmatic, those are precisely the people that like we're not so sure we're going to listen to. The people who shill, right? They shill, but like they know nothing about the project. Classic people that you don't listen to. You listen to the engineer type people who are like, yeah, I don't know, this one thing I was a little bit concerned about. So this is what we're trying to sense for, is people who are capable of changing their minds. And we're setting up a game so that those people that are viewed by the members of the DAO that are the most likely or the best at changing their mind with new information, that autonomously this protocol is giving them additional influence in the game. And what we think that this can do is it can make a DAO on average much more intelligent. So like voting is a no-no, no more voting. Voting is the best way to waste great minds on mediocre decisions. Voting is out. Instead, what we want to do is you want people to have their money where their mouth is. So they have a stake in the game, they have skin in the game. And then you want them to make statements about like, here's the reasons that I believe this. And whenever you give a reason why you believe something, you're implicitly saying that if this weren't the case, then I would change my mind. So this is the game that we're trying to set up. Like I said, like raise your hand to the height of how much that actually made sense. Nobody has raised their hand.
Oh, we got a couple. Let's go.
Okay. Great, cool. So that's like what we're trying to set up. This might have even been a question, but maybe we'll save them until the end.
Perfect. Tying it all back to Forecaster, my intuition is that leveraging open social graphs of sorts and mapping the relationships between people and what they believe in might be like a critical component of building information markets. At least that's my hunch. But I'd be curious to hear if any of you agree, disagree, could point to some example of how that might be relevant, if at all. Otherwise, we can move on.
Well, my strategy for this is to start with the fun and games and the mean side of things. I have many ideas. I wanted to do a ZK Yoink for like Tinder performance, right? Because I have like access to the Tinder API. Let's say you actually incentivize people to like disclose their Tinder Hinge performance. You can actually have like a Gen Z love index, something that does not exist publicly today, right? And especially on a social network like Farcaster, I think it'd be a lot of fun. But now, whether this on the social side, like a publicly stating your bets basically in an information market, is that good or bad? I have arguments for both. Let's talk about investing, right? So let's say you're like really bullish on Apple. You think Apple's going to like go crazy in the next few months, and you have your arguments for why that is. If you publicly state that, there's two things that can happen. One, people take you more seriously, and they consider your arguments more clearly. Or because you've stated it publicly, you're going to be more tied to your the arguments that you've made, and it's going to be harder for you to change your mind, right? I don't know enough about human psychology to know which one of those is correct, like which one wins out, but it'll be interesting to see.
I love it. I do think we are getting close to time, but I do want to give a quick round of applause to these incredible panelists, and then we'll move on to questions. Everyone, round of applause.